A woman who has been through too much finally sits down on a bed, on a bus seat, on the floor of a bathroom. It doesn't really matter where. What matters is the feeling. She sits there not because she's physically tired, but because something inside her quietly gives way, like a bridge holding more weight than it was ever built to carry. And if you, as a woman, have ever lived through something like that even once, then you know it doesn't break with noise. It doesn't crash. It just folds softly, silently, as if your heart itself is whispering, I can't hold all of this at the same time. Women who have carried too much in life understand that moment in a way others simply don't. And the strange part is you usually don't realize you've become that woman until life makes you see it. At some point, someone looks at you and asks, why are you so calm about things that should upset you? And you don't quite know how to explain that it isn't calm, it isn't peace. It's a quiet numbness that grows when your mind has been stretched far beyond what it was ever meant to handle. It's the stillness that shows up when your emotions have run too many races without rest. Most people think resilience means pure strength. But for a woman who has gone through too much, resilience often feels more like survival, something you practice because you had no other option. And because of that, you carry a kind of inner story that other people can feel even if they can't put words to it. There is a weight to your presence, a depth in your eyes, a softness in the way you listen, a heaviness in the way you pause before you answer. You learn to fold your feelings into shapes that can fit into the corners of your mind. You learn to keep walking even when your inner world feels like a storm. And there is something almost opposite and confusing about it. Women who have gone through too much often look wise, calm, mature, thoughtful. You look like the one who has it all together. But if anyone could open your inner world for just a moment, they would see that this maturity was not gently built. It was forced out of you, not slowly developed but pulled out, not chosen but required. Some people grow because they are loved and protected. Others, especially many women, grow because life never gave them the version of childhood or youth they saw others having. And when you have carried more emotional weight than your body and mind were ever meant to hold, something changes in the way your mind shapes itself. Psychologists might call parts of this emotional overcompensation, but let's keep it simple. When your nervous system has been overwhelmed too many times, it starts to rearrange itself. Not perfectly, not smoothly, but desperately. It adapts by being extra alert. It adapts by bracing itself before anything happens. It adapts by expecting the worst, even when the worst is not actually coming. If you have ever wondered why you overthink so much, why you notice every small change in tone, why you feel you must prepare for problems that haven't even shown up, this is why. Your mind learned that not knowing what would happen next was dangerous. So it built defenses you never sat down and asked for. And even when you heal, even when you grow, pieces of those defenses stay, like old beams hidden under a rebuilt house. Women who have gone through too much often carry an invisible education. You know how to read silence. You know how to sense tension in a room before anyone else does. You know how to walk around conflict the way someone steps carefully around broken glass. You know what it is to calm others while your own heart is shaking. You know how to make yourself smaller in moments when attention feels unsafe. You know how to bounce back quickly from disappointment because life never gave you the luxury of falling apart for long. You build emotional reflexes that other people mistake for your personality. But they're not simply personality traits. They are survival habits, learned answers. They are automatic scripts wired into your body, and for many women, they start early. Research in developmental psychology tells us that when a person lives through long periods of stress, uncertainty, or emotional overload, the brain adjusts. It becomes more sensitive to threat, more reactive to small signals, more tuned in to patterns others overlook. People often call it intuition. But for many women, it is not magic. It is pattern recognition learned the hard way. There is a special tenderness in women who have gone through too much. A gentleness that comes from knowing what pain actually feels like, not as an idea, but as lived reality. And this softness is often misread as weakness. But if you have carried heavy seasons, you know that is not true. Softness doesn't come from an easy life. Softness often grows out of a hard life. A life that has taught you empathy by throwing you straight into it. A life that has shown you that almost everyone is carrying something they're not saying out loud. This empathy creates a strange contrast in you. You become the woman who comforts others so naturally, so instinctively, that people don't see you've rarely been truly comforted yourself. You understand others because you had to understand yourself in ways many never have to face. You know how to offer warmth because you've spent long chapters in the cold. You know how to hold space for someone else because you know what it feels like when no one did that for you. But behind all that gentleness, there is something else hiding: exhaustion. The quiet exhaustion of a woman who has been strong for far too long. Not just the tiredness you show the world, but the deep one you carry alone. The kind of exhaustion that doesn't make you lie down, but makes you pull back. The type that isn't healed by sleep, only by being truly understood. You become the kind of woman who can carry everyone except herself. The woman who takes care of others with ease, but can't seem to ask for help. The one who gives clear advice but lies with her own questions. And it's not always because you don't trust people. It's because your mind learned early that relying on someone else was risky. And that risk, for a woman who has gone through too much, feels like the very start of instability. People often ask why women who have carried too much become so emotionally independent that it turns into isolation. But independence, in this case, is not pure confidence. It is protection, it is armor. It is the safest choice in a world that has felt unsafe too many times. You learn how to comfort yourself, how to analyze yourself, how to correct yourself, how to care for yourself. Not because you dreamed of doing it all alone, but because you had to. And that creates a pattern. The outside world sees a woman who is capable, steady, grounded. Your inner world knows a woman who is tired, sensitive, quietly overwhelmed. And this split shapes your mind in deep ways. You become familiar with emotional contradictions. You can be open yet guarded, caring yet a little distant, present yet far away in your thoughts, hopeful yet careful, emotionally rich yet very selective about what you show. Women who have gone through too much don't avoid vulnerability because they hate it. They avoid it because in their story, vulnerability often came with a price. Disappointment, misunderstanding, emotional imbalance. You learned early that vulnerability is not always shared. Sometimes it is a one-sided risk. So you open up slowly, gently, thoughtfully. You reveal yourself in layers. Not as a game, as protection. But here is a truth that almost no one says to you clearly. Nothing about you is broken. Your reactions make sense. Your caution makes sense. Your depth makes sense. The way your mind adjusted is not a flaw. It is a fair answer to what you went through. The mind is like a storyteller. And when a woman has lived through too many painful chapters, her inner story becomes more detailed. Her emotions become more complex. Her inner world fills with meanings that most people never see. And still, despite all of this, there is something deeply beautiful about the mind of a woman who has been through too much. You are often the one who loves quietly but strongly. You treasure small acts of kindness more than big, showy gestures. You notice the details others miss. You hold on to moments of peace because you know what real chaos feels like. You value honest emotions because you have seen what pretending can cost. And one of the most striking traits you carry is this: you keep going no matter what. even when your heart is heavy. Even when your mind is worn out. Even when the future feels unclear, you keep going. Not because you are unbreakable, but because you have been broken before and still learned how to stand. There is a certain kind of wisdom that only comes from surviving yourself. There is a kind of maturity that only comes from walking through emotions without a clear map. There is a kind of self-knowledge that only comes from being pushed to understand your own inner world. And women who have lived through too much carry all of that within them, like secret chapters in a book they never planned to write. But here is the part almost nobody sees. Under all the survival modes, all the quick emotional reactions, all the maturity, all the depth, there is still a part of you that wishes life had been softer. Not perfect, just kinder. A version of life where you didn't have to grow up so fast. A version where your body and nervous system weren't trained to brace for impact. A version where you didn't always have to be the strong woman. And still, even without that easier version of life, you move forward. You show up. You carry wisdom that seems older than your years. And you slowly become the kind of woman who can turn her hard experiences into understanding, her lessons into kindness, her pain into depth, her struggle into a quiet power. Because women who have gone through too much don't just live through life. They study it. They question it. They reflect on it. They turn their past into insight, their emotions into meaning, their experiences into perspective. And in doing that, even if they never see it in themselves, they become a light for others. You become the woman others come to when they need honesty, stillness, or clarity. The woman who listens without judging. The woman who understands without needing all the details. Because you know what it feels like to carry something you can't quite explain. You know what it feels like to hold emotions that don't yet have words. You know what it feels like to want someone to get it without asking you to retell the whole story. And that is where your unique way of seeing the world becomes not only a reflection of your past, but a gift to the people around you. There is a moment, quiet, almost too soft to notice, when a woman who has gone through too much starts to realize she sees life differently than most. It doesn't hit all at once. It comes slowly through small realizations. You notice that the things that make other people panic barely move you. You notice that the things that make others wildly excited feel strangely muted in your own chest. You notice your mind always standing a few steps ahead, thinking of what could happen, preparing for outcomes, bracing for emotional waves before they even arrive. At first, you might think this makes you odd, but over time, you start to understand that this difference is simply the leftover mark of everything you have carried. Women who have lived through too much build a relationship with reality that is both close and far. On one hand, you feel everything deeply, sometimes too deeply. On the other hand, you've taught yourself to pull back from those deep feelings when they become too much. This ability to feel and step back at the same time is not usually taught in school or at home. It's something your inner self builds as a way to survive. A way to balance feeling intense emotions with the need to stay safe. Some psychologists call it emotional duality. The ability to feel empathy while holding back your own openness, to look calm while walking through inner storms, to stay functional while your mind is carrying weights others can't see. And this duality shapes how you move through the world in ways you may not even notice. You become the woman who hesitates before relaxing into happiness, the woman who examines comfort before she trusts it, the woman who quietly asks herself, is this real? Even when things seem to be going well, not because you're negative, but because your brain remembers that in your past, good moments were often followed by hard ones. And even if life is better now, even if your outside world has changed, your nervous system does not forget quickly. It still gets ready for a fall, even when the ground is steady. This can make your relationships feel complicated. Not because you don't care, but because you care with a depth that can scare you. You fear losing people before they are even truly yours. You picture the endings before the beginnings have time to settle. You say sorry too often. You forgive too fast. You stay quiet about what you need because you don't want to feel like a burden. You listen more than you speak. You give more than you receive. And when someone finally looks at you and asks, "What do you need?" you honestly don't know how to answer. Because somewhere along the way, you never learned how to think about your own needs without feeling guilty. Women who have gone through too much often grow a very particular style of love. Steady, deep, quietly loyal, yet careful. You don't love carelessly. But once you do love, you love with a sincerity that feels rare. You notice small changes. You feel the emotional tone behind a person's words. You sense when someone is hurting before they admit it. You show up in ways others don't even think of. But that deep love has a cost. You are easily hurt. Not always by direct cruelty, but by carelessness. Not always by open hostility, but by inconsistency. Because inconsistency can feel like the early steps of abandonment. And abandonment, even in the smallest form, wakes up old memories in your body. This is what many people never really understand. When a woman who has gone through too much reacts strongly to something small, it often isn't the current moment she's reacting to. It is the echo of all the past moments where she felt unsafe, unprotected, unheard, or unseen. Her body answers to patterns, even when today's situation is harmless. Her emotions shift based on old links that were formed long before she had the words to explain them. But instead of trying to lay all this out, she stays quiet. She hides her triggers. She covers her anxiety. She smiles through discomfort. She protects peace in the room, even when her own heart is unsettled, because she fears being misunderstood. She fears being called too sensitive or too emotional. So she learns to keep her storms inside. Yet here's the irony. These same women are often the emotional anchors in their circles. They give clarity, they give perspective, they give meaning. They are the friends others come to with their deepest fears and realest feelings. And they hold those feelings with care, gentleness, and no judgment, because they understand. They understand in ways many others cannot. They have lived through things that forced them to become fluent in emotion long before they were ready. And that emotional fluency gives them a kind of special sight. They can see behind masks. They can tell when someone is acting. They can feel the tightness in a conversation that others think is normal. They can hear when "I'm fine" really means "I'm not okay at all." They can pick up on emotional changes with a sharpness that feels almost like a finely tuned instrument. This can be both a blessing and a burden. A blessing because it helps them connect deeply with people. A burden because it can make them feel responsible for feelings that are not theirs. They soak up too much. They take on too much. They become healers without naming it. And healers, if they aren't careful, become drained. This tiredness shows up quietly. Not always through big breakdowns, but through slow stepping back. A woman who has gone through too much will not always say, "I'm overwhelmed." She will simply become quieter. Her texts become shorter. Her laugh becomes softer. Her presence in the room becomes lighter, like she is slowly trying to fade without worrying anyone. And when someone asks, "Are you okay?" she smiles and says, not because everything is fine, but because she doesn't know how to explain everything whirling inside. She doesn't want to be a problem. She doesn't want to be judged. She doesn't want to bring those feelings back to life by putting them into words. So she holds them inside, but there is another side to women like this. A side that is strong in a way many never see. Not loud strength, not showy strength, quiet strength. The kind that keeps going. The kind that stays when it would be easier to leave. The kind that keeps getting up to meet life, even on days when life hasn't felt fair to them. They have lived through too many emotional winters to be afraid of the cold. They have walked through storms without any cover. They have rebuilt themselves from pieces more than once. And that gives them something rare, inner resilience. Not the kind of resilience that looks like a big movie moment. Resilience that looks simple from the outside. The resilience to wake up again. To try again. To trust again. To love again, even when it's scary. Even when they've been let down. Even when their mind whispers that it would be safer to stay closed. Because deep down, women who have gone through too much still want connection. They still long for someone to really see them. They still want gentleness. They still dream of a life where they don't have to be strong all the time. And it's this small, quiet, steady hope that keeps them moving. But hope alone is not what shapes them. What really shapes a woman like this is how she thinks about her experiences. She doesn't just go through pain. She studies it. She tries to understand it. She turns it into insight. She looks for meaning even in the memories that hurt. She finds lessons in loss, clarity in confusion, growth in heartbreak. And this builds a way of seeing the world that is both delicate and very powerful. Delicate because it comes from real wounds. Powerful because it builds real wisdom. That wisdom makes her patient. It makes her compassionate. It helps her see life from many angles. She knows people are complicated. She knows emotions come in layers. She knows everyone has a story. This understanding makes her forgiving, not because she is weak, but because she can see more of the picture. She knows people often act from their own pain. That hurt people sometimes hurt others. That healing is not a straight line. That boundaries matter, and so does kindness. There's one more piece of her inner life that often goes unseen. She carries invisible grief. Not always the grief of losing someone else, but the grief of losing different versions of herself. The version of herself who trusted easily. The version who laughed without worrying what would come next. The version who wasn't afraid of not knowing. The version who believed things would just work out without so much planning. This grief doesn't destroy her, but it shapes her. It makes her softer in some ways, quieter in others, more reflective, more careful, more thoughtful. It makes her value moments others rush past. A calm morning, a real conversation, a gentle touch, a safe person. These small things feel holy to her because she has lived through chapters where nothing felt safe. And still, in the middle of all that, she keeps growing. Slowly, quietly, in ways others may never notice. She learns boundaries. She learns her worth. She learns how to calm her own emotions. She learns to tell the difference between instinct and old hurt. She learns how to open up again, not carelessly, but bravely. Because women who have gone through too much are not defined only by what happened to them. They are defined by what they chose to become after it. You carry scars, but you also carry wisdom. You carry pain, but you also carry deep care. You carry hard memories, but you also carry hope. And the more you understand your own mind and heart, the more you can see something freeing. You are not fragile. You are not weak. You are not ruined. You are adaptive. You are insightful. You are emotionally detailed in a world that often prefers simple. You are sensitive in a world that often rewards being shut down. You are thoughtful in a world that often moves too fast. Your mind is not just a battlefield. It is proof. Proof of everything you have survived. Proof of everything you have learned. Proof of how much depth can grow inside a woman when life itself has not been gentle. And maybe the most beautiful truth is this. Any woman who has gone through too much has the potential to become a lighthouse. Not because she is perfect, but because she knows what darkness feels like. Not because she shines all the time, but because she understands how frightening it is to feel lost. And because she understands that she can become the kind of person whose presence feels like direction. The kind of woman who can offer warmth without needing anything back. The kind of woman who turns pain into perspective and perspective into wisdom. She is the quiet one who learns to live deeply, who learns to love slowly but fully, who learns to trust carefully but honestly, who learns to rebuild herself until her inner world becomes a place where she finally feels safe. And if you are one of those women, if you have gone through too much, felt too much, carried too much, maybe it's time you see this clearly. Everything you became was not by accident. It was not random. It was not weakness. It was adaptation. It was intelligence. It was emotional evolution. And now, even if you don't fully see it yet, you have become a woman who can create a future far softer than your past. A woman who can end old patterns. A woman who can build new emotional habits. A woman who can choose softness without fear. A woman who can choose love without losing herself. A woman who can choose a life where strength is no longer just a survival instinct, but a quiet, peaceful expression of who you are becoming. You didn't just go through too much. You grew through it. And that growth, even though it rose out of pain, is now your quiet power.